Welcome to the Suhayl the Seeking Fox podcast explainer. Before we really get going, just a quick reminder to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this if you're into these kinds of deep dives. So tonight we're taking a laid-back, late-night stroll through the metaphorical dark forest of our own minds. Grab a cozy drink, settle in, and let's just have a real, honest conversation about how we perceive the world around us. Oh, and I see our little mascot, Suhayl the Seeking Fox, is already wandering around the studio today, totally ready to dig into some philosophy with us. Let's do this. Okay, so let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. We walk around all day with our eyes open, taking in literally millions of data points, endlessly scrolling through feeds on our phones, just getting bombarded by content. But are we really seeing? It's a heavy question, right? It totally challenges this basic assumption we all walk around with, the idea that just because the lights are on and our eyes are open, it actually means we understand what is right in front of us. Well, spoiler alert, having your eyes open doesn't actually guarantee you're awake to reality. Think of it kind of like this. Imagine you're walking through that dark forest I mentioned a second ago. Nur, which translates to illumination or light, is basically your flashlight. It reveals the trees, the path, maybe a sudden drop-off, or I don't know, a predator. It makes reality visible. It's much like staring at shadows flickering on a cave wall. The light shows you the shapes are actually there. But Basira, that is the inner insight that actually understands what those shapes mean. Without Basira, the flashlight just lights up a bunch of scary, meaningless shapes. So Nur gives you the visual data, but Basira is what makes that data intelligible. Let's look a little closer at this concept because it's absolutely crucial. Basira comes from an old Arabic root associated with sight and perception, but it pushes way, way beyond just your physical eyeballs. It's the actual capacity to recognize, understand, and discern what that light is revealing. We're talking about how we actually process reality on a much deeper level. It's all about seeing beyond the superficial surface-level projection and really understanding the core of what you're interacting with. This brings us to a really profound quote from the Quran. It says, "It is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts within the breasts that are blind." Man, that hits hard, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this incredibly sobering reality that you could have perfect physical vision, you could read all the books, watch all the events unfolding in the world, and yet still remain completely, totally spiritually blind to what it all actually means. Now, what's really fascinating about this is how it highlights a trap so many of us fall into. We constantly equate being smart with seeing clearly. But listen, intelligence absolutely does not equal basira. Being highly clever doesn't automatically give you insight. Honestly, sometimes it makes it worse. Really smart people rationalize their bad habits, they defend falsehoods, and they follow the crowd all the time. They just use bigger, fancier words to justify ignoring the obvious evidence. Intelligence is really just raw processing power, whereas basira is the actual clarity of perception. So the real question for our own mental hygiene isn't just, can I see? As in, do I have the facts? The real gritty question we need to be asking ourselves is, can I actually weigh those facts objectively, or is the scale already completely tipped by my own biases? Can I see clearly without my ego, my desires, my fears, or my tribal loyalty distorting the picture? Can I look at a situation without letting my own desperate need to be right completely warp the reality of it? Our buddy Suhayl the Fox looks like he's just deeply contemplating the universe right now. And he gets it. He understands that recognizing Ḥaqq, or true reality, takes way more than just gathering raw data. Ḥaqq is the reality of things exactly as they truly are. But to actually recognize it, you need receptivity, not just a massive barrage of information. You literally have to be open and willing to receive the truth in the first place. Honestly, this explains so much about the world today. Have you ever wondered how two people can look at the exact same evidence, like the exact same video clip or data set, and reach completely opposite conclusions? It's wild, but it happens constantly because the main obstacle isn't the evidence itself. It's a lack of receptivity in the heart. Perception isn't purely a brain exercise. If your heart is closed off to a truth just because it's inconvenient to your worldview, well, all the evidence in the world isn't going to make a dent. And here is what that blindness of the heart actually looks like in our everyday lives. It's when our internal interpretation software is so completely broken that we look right at a toxic situation and entirely mislabel it. We look at gross injustice and somehow call it justice. We see blind conformity and praise it as loyalty. We might look at straight-up manipulation in a relationship and call it love. Or we see someone's blatant greed and praise it as ambition. We see pure arrogance and call it confidence, or we mistake our own paralyzing fear for wisdom. Our physical eyes are working perfectly fine, but the heart's translation of that data is totally upside down. Well, Basira is the ultimate antidote to this specific kind of self-deception. It acts like a mirror, forcing us to just stop, take a breath, and ask ourselves a very uncomfortable late-night kind of question. Am I actually seeing reality? Or am I merely seeing what I want reality to be? Because let's be real for a second. Reality is often messy, it's inconvenient, and it usually demands that we change. On the flip side, our fabricated, comfortable version of reality lets us stay exactly as we are without putting in any work. And that naturally brings us to a really beautiful partnership with a concept called Ṣidq, which essentially means deep, unflinching honesty. Honesty with reality. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. Before you can be truly honest with reality, you have to have the basira to see it accurately in the first place. Think about it. You literally cannot acknowledge what you completely refuse to perceive. So the really crucial point is how these two concepts interact when they are missing from our lives. Failing to see reality, which is a lack of basira, creates ignorance. It is basically like wandering blindfolded right near the edge of a cliff. You just genuinely don't know the danger is there. But seeing reality and refusing to acknowledge it, a lack of Ṣidq, creates denial. That is essentially like standing right next to a hungry wolf and pretending it's a cute little puppy. You know the truth, but you are flat out lying to yourself. We absolutely need both the insight to see the truth and the honesty to admit it, to truly protect ourselves. You know, the ultimate antagonist in this metaphorical dark forest isn't a lack of information, and it actually isn't even ignorance. It's our own ego and our attachments. It is that super loud voice inside demanding that our political or social tribe is always 100% right, that our past mistakes were totally justified, and that our own self-image remains spotless. Basically, our ego desperately needs reality to fit its preferred narrative, no matter what. Overcoming that loud ego and actually embracing basira requires real intellectual humility. It takes serious spiritual courage to say 4 incredibly powerful and incredibly difficult words. I might be wrong. It sounds so simple, right? But man, saying that and actually meaning it is profound. It totally shatters the ego's defenses. It immediately creates the breathing room and the necessary space for true correction and real growth to happen. But definitely do not mistake this humility for passivity. Basira is absolutely not a passive spectator sport where you just sit back on the couch and let the universe wash over you. No way. It's a highly active, totally engaged mode of living. A person operating with insight actively examines things. They reflect. They notice patterns over time. They are constantly putting in the work to distinguish the shiny appearance of a thing from its actual solid substance. They are constantly checking in and asking themselves, what is really happening here? Not what people say is happening, not what the surface looks like it's doing, but what is the actual core reality of this moment? When you finally start asking what is really happening beneath the surface, that right there is the true beginning of wisdom. That's the moment when you actually start playing the game of life with your eyes wide open. Let's bring this all together into a really elegant conceptual flow, kind of like a roadmap for the human journey. First, there is Nur, the light that illuminates the world around us. Then comes Basira, the insight that actually perceives what that light hits. Because of that insight, Ḥaqq, the true reality, is recognized. Once reality is recognized, Huda, or guidance, gives you a clear direction to walk. Iman, meaning faith and commitment, embraces that path. And finally, Taqwa, a deep consciousness, protects your alignment on that path so you don't wander off into the weeds. It is just such a brilliant, beautifully interconnected system. When you look at it all laid out like that, it brings us to a pretty tough realization. Sometimes the absolute deepest tragedy in our lives or in society as a whole isn't that we lack the light. The information is usually right there. The truth is so often just hiding in plain sight. No, the real tragedy is that we lack the willingness to actually open our hearts and see what that light is revealing to us. We are going to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder tonight. As you go about your week, interacting with the news, hanging out with your friends, and dealing with your own internal thoughts, ask yourself this: are you seeing reality, or are you merely looking at it? Thank you so much for joining this explainer on the Suhayl the Seeking Fox podcast. If this late-night stroll through the mind brought you some value, please remember to hit like, comment, share, and subscribe for more deep dives. Until next time, keep seeking.